Every single human culture ever documented, every single one across every continent, every era, every level of technological development has believed in something beyond the physical world. Not most cultures, all of them. And here's the thing that should stop you cold. The oldest religious site ever found isn't a temple. It isn't a burial ground. It isn't a carved idol or a sacred text. It's a structure so ancient it predates writing, predates agriculture, predates everything we assumed came before religion. Because religion isn't old the way people think it is. Organized worship, priests, holy books, that's all recent. Embarrassingly recent. Something came before all of it. Something so deep it predates language itself. And once you understand what it actually is, you will never think about gods or about yourself the same way again. Let's start with the thing everyone gets wrong. Most people imagine religion as something that came after civilization. A society gets organized enough, develops agriculture, accumulates surplus food, and out of that leisure, gods emerge. Belief as a luxury of the settled life. That story is wrong. Not slightly wrong, fundamentally completely wrong. And the evidence sits in the hills of southeastern Turkey, where it has been waiting for 12,000 years. The site is called Göbekli Tepe, and it should not exist. Discovered in 1994 by a Kurdish shepherd, it's a complex of massive carved stone pillars, some over 18 feet tall, weighing up to 20 tons, arranged in circular enclosures, decorated with intricate animal carvings and abstract symbols. A religious site, by any reasonable definition, built for ritual, for ceremony, for communal spiritual practice. And it is 12,000 years old. Agriculture arrived in that same region roughly 10,500 years ago. Göbekli Tepe predates farming by 1,500 years. It predates pottery, it predates the wheel, it predates writing by 8,000 years. The people who built it were hunter-gatherers. No permanent settlements, no crops, no surplus food, no organized labor system of any kind we would recognize. And yet they moved 20-ton stone pillars and assembled them into a complex that took generations to build. The archaeologist Klaus Schmidt, who led excavations there for nearly 2 decades, proposed something that hit the field like a thunderbolt. It wasn't civilization that produced religion, it was religion that produced civilization. The hunger to build a sacred place drove the organizational complexity that eventually led to agriculture, to cities, to everything else. The temple came first, the city came later. That is not a small revision. That is a complete inversion of everything we thought we understood. But it raises the deeper question. Where did the impulse to build the temple come from in the first place? What was already happening inside the human mind that made Göbekli Tepe feel necessary? To answer that, we need to go back further. Before the stone pillars. Before any physical evidence of religious practice at all. Back to the cognitive machinery that made belief possible. The first piece of that machinery is called agency detection. Your brain, right now, is running a constant background process, scanning your environment for agents, for things that have intentions, for things that can act and affect you. This system evolved for a simple reason. In the ancestral environment, the cost of missing an agent failing to detect a predator in the grass was death. The cost of a false positive detecting an agent that wasn't there was just a brief, unnecessary alarm. The evolutionary math is brutally simple. Our brains were built to over-detect agency, to find minds behind movements even when no mind exists. This is why you see faces in clouds, why a rustling bush in the dark makes your heart spike even when you know it's just wind. Your brain isn't malfunctioning. It's doing exactly what it was built to do. Now, what happens when you apply that algorithm to the universe itself? Lightning strikes, a child dies, the rains stop coming. Your brain, primed by millions of years of evolution to detect agency behind events, does not conclude. These are random, indifferent physical processes. It looks for the agent. It looks for the mind. And when it can't find a visible cause, it infers one. An agent powerful enough to cause lightning, capable of anger, of generosity, of judgment. An agent that might respond to the right words, to the right offering. You just invented a god, not through philosophical reasoning, through the automatic, involuntary operation of a cognitive system that evolved for a completely different purpose. But agency detection alone doesn't explain the full picture, because gods in virtually every culture aren't just powerful agents. They're moral agents. They care how humans behave. They reward and punish and watch and judge. That feature requires a second cognitive system, one that evolved entirely separately. That system is called theory of mind. Theory of mind is the ability to model other minds, to understand that other people have beliefs, intentions, and desires that differ from your own. It's the foundation of human social life. Without it, there is no cooperation, no empathy, no love, no story. And here's the remarkable thing. The same system that lets you model the mind of the person across from you also lets you model the mind of something something you can't see. An ancestor, a spirit, a god. Theory of mind doesn't require its object to be physically present. Once you can ask what does that person want, you can also ask what does the storm want. The invisible mind becomes as real, cognitively speaking, as the visible one. There's a third ingredient, the one that explains why religion doesn't just emerge but thrives, spreads, becomes the most durable institution in human history. That ingredient is the awareness of death. Humans are, as far as we know, the only animals fully aware of their own mortality. The moment the brain became complex enough to model the future, it became complex enough to understand the one cause and effect chain that ends the same way for everyone. You will die. Everyone you love will die. Everything you build will eventually be gone. That knowledge is not easy to carry. And religion, in every form it has ever taken, provides a framework for carrying it. A story in which death is not the end, in which suffering has meaning, in which the universe is not indifferent but attentive. Terror management theory proposes that much of human cultural behavior, art, achievement, moral systems, religion, can be understood as a response to the awareness of death. When researchers prime people with thoughts of mortality, even subliminally, those people immediately show increased religiosity and increased attachment to their cultural worldview. Death is in the room, even invisibly, and the brain reaches for its most fundamental meaning-making tools. Put those three things together. Agency detection generating hidden minds behind natural events. Theory of mind allowing those minds to be modeled and communicated with, and the awareness of death creating an overwhelming need for a framework large enough to make mortality survivable. You don't need a prophet. You don't need a revelation. You just need a human brain under enough pressure and religion will emerge. Not as an external imposition, as an internal necessity. And here's where the archaeological record confirms everything from a completely different angle. The oldest evidence of symbolic thinking in our species dates to roughly 100,000 years ago. Ochre processing sites in South Africa where ancient humans ground red pigment to mark and decorate things. Around the same period, we find deliberate burials. Bodies placed carefully in the ground, positioned with intention, surrounded by objects. Red ochre in many confirmed cases. Flowers in at least one proposed case. A burial implies something. It implies that the people doing it believed the dead person was still something, still meaningful, still deserving of care. That is not an instinct. That is a belief. And it appears in the archaeological record at exactly the same moment as symbolic thinking. The first signs of a mind capable of representing one thing through another. The symbolic revolution and the spiritual impulse appear to be the same event. The mind that can use a symbol is also the mind that can believe in something it cannot see. Representation and faith may be two expressions of the same underlying cognitive leap. There's one more piece of this that doesn't get enough attention. Ritual. When groups of people perform the same actions together, move in synchrony, recite the same words, share the same symbolic objects, something happens neurologically. Neural synchrony between participants increases. Oxytocin rises. Trust deepens in ways that are measurable and lasting. The group that worships together coheres in ways that groups without shared ritual simply do not. And in a world where group cohesion was survival, this was not a trivial advantage. This was everything. Religion in this framing is not just a metaphysical claim about reality, it is social technology. The most powerful group binding mechanism our species ever developed. The groups that believed together survived together. Their descendants are everyone. So when did ancient humans start believing in gods? The honest answer is we don't know exactly. The physical evidence takes us back 12,000 years with certainty. The symbolic burials push it back another 88,000. The cognitive systems that generate belief are older still, embedded in evolutionary history stretching back millions of years. What we do know is this: the belief didn't come from outside. It didn't arrive with a prophet or a text. It came from inside. From agency detection firing at the thunder. From theory of mind asking what the storm wants. From a conscious creature lying awake in the dark, aware for the first time that it will die, reaching for something larger than itself to hold on to. That reaching is what Göbekli Tepe is. 20-ton stones moved by people with no wheels, no cities, no writing, and apparently no reason to build something that large except that something inside them insisted it was necessary. That this place, this gathering, this shared act of belief was worth organizing entire communities around. The god may be imaginary. The need is not. The need is as old as self-awareness itself. As old as the first mind that looked at the night sky and felt underneath the wonder, the specific human vertigo of knowing it was small and temporary and desperately looking for something that wasn't. Next time you feel that vertigo, that late night vastness when the universe feels very large and you feel very small, you're not having a crisis. You're You're running the oldest software in the human library, the same software that moved mountains before it knew what mountains were for. That's not a glitch. That's the whole thing.